considering that my first video started at, funnily enough, the end with a capital E, that is. In that episode, I mentioned the Ender Dragon only briefly, speculating that, based on the achievement for defeating it, titled Free the End, it seemed that the Ender Dragon was a tyrant oppressing the society of Endermen. But, after digging into more of the game's secrets, I don't think that's the case anymore. Or, at least it's not the full story. Sure, it might be easy to look at the Endermen, the descendants of an ancient builder civilization transformed by spending generations in the end and subsisting off of a diet of chorus fruit, and presume that they must be at the mercy of this powerful dragon that rules over them. But if we dig into the evidence, it actually tells us something very different. So today we're gonna focus on Jean and her story. Jean is the official canonical name of the Ender Dragon. Today is all about Jean and how we as the player have been ignorant to the fact that for the past decade the game has been begging, nearly screaming at us to not kill her. That's right, we're supposed to spare the Ender Dragon. But to understand why, let's start at the beginning of the end. So, to call Jean the Ender Dragon is a bit misleading. Sure, she's the only dragon found in the end, but the important detail we tend to overlook is that it wasn't always that way. The end gives us clues that, at least at one point in history, multiple Ender Dragons made their home here. For evidence of this, just look at the End ships found throughout the dimension. These things have dragon heads mounted onto their masts, clearly the spoils of battles against dragons that once populated this world. And this already tells us a lot of different things. Not only that dragons, plural, once existed in this realm, but also that a dragon hunting civilization existed. A hunter civilization that apparently must have been pretty successful, judging by the dragon heads found at the mast. And if you're asking who these dragon hunters were, well, I think the answer at this point should be fairly obvious. That society of ancient builders that we've been tracking ever since episode 1 of this Minecraft lore series. Whoever constructed these massive flying ships were clearly builders. The End ship is just this impressive feat of engineering with floors constructed from the finest obsidian. There's also the fact that the ship is protected by shulkers, a mob that you might be tempted to write off as just a weird creature shoved into the end to round out the enemies found there, but it is so much more. You see, if you read the entry for the shulker in my favorite go-to Minecraft lore book, The Mob Bestiary, which, as a reminder, is written from the perspective of an in-world adventurer and researcher, the shulker's purpur blocks might actually be man-made. To quote from the book, the exterior of the shulker may be a natural adaptation to help conceal it, or it may be engineered by the city's architects. That is a weird thing to call out there, book. What a huge logical leap to make. I don't know about you, but it seems to me like it's heavily implying that that is the right answer. That the shulkers were actually engineered by builders. Still, whether these shulkers are a feat of bioengineering or just an instance of cleverly domesticating a native End species, one thing is clear: whoever built the End ships were serious about science. So why were the builders hunting dragons? Were they merely trophy hunting? Tracking down the biggest and most dangerous game just because they could? We've talked in past theories how the civilization demonstrated a lot of hubris, convinced that their ability to build gave them the power of gods, with power over life and death. So could the war against dragons just be another extension of that? Maybe, but I don't think it's just that. Case in point, the Elytra capes that enable the player to fly. These capes are kind of like the final reward in a traditional game of Minecraft. You beat the dragon, you get access to the End ship, and boom, you find this unique item that can only be found here. And not only are they exclusive to the End ships, but they have a texture and use that all but screams that they were made from the remains of defeated dragons. We clipped their wings so that we ourselves could obtain the power of flight. I don't think it's a coincidence that the one major flying item that we obtain is being done in the one world where the main mob is a giant flying dragon. When the builders got to the End, they saw something they had yet to conquer: the skies. And so they were determined to tame those skies, just like they had done to the overworld and the nether. What I'm really interested in here is the story of the Ender Dragon. The evidence inside the game, it seems to suggest a tale of multiple competing forces. On one hand, we have the End ships, which seem to be pretty clear evidence that there were builders who were into dragon hunting. So the builders must have been anti-dragon, right? That's where the story gets complicated, because as anyone who's tried to take down the Ender Dragon knows, there are Ender crystals spread across its habitat that are capable of healing it. Someone or something thing clearly wanted to keep this creature alive. And not only that, but the end crystals themselves are not naturally forming. They're objects that are constructed artificially by combining an Eye of Ender and a gas tier and then encasing it all in glass. But what's especially telling about the end crystals is where you find them, on top of obsidian pillars and inside of protective cages. In short, it looks like someone has gone through a lot of steps to make this ender dragon harder to kill, not only by creating the end crystals, but by putting them on top of pillars that would be a challenge to reach and then encasing them in a further protective barrier. And something tells me that Jean lacks the opposable thumbs capable of forging glass. Something else is going on here. Some series of builders really wanted this dragon to stay alive, and so they built an elaborate security system to make sure that that dragon stayed alive. And so we have evidence that suggests two conflicting stories: a ship that seems like the product of builders who are into slaying dragons, and a dragon protection defense grid that seems to be built for the opposite purpose. So what is going on here? Was there like a civil war? Did the builders who came to the end split into two factions, one side taking the role of dragon slayer and the other taking the role of dragon worshipper? If that was the case, why would anyone in their right mind side with the dragons? After all, the Ender Dragon is a hostile mob. Why would someone take it upon themselves to defend the dragons? Well, it seems to suggest that the hunters were too successful, to the point that they nearly hunted the Ender Dragon species to extinction. It seems a lot less like valiant heroes defying the odds to defeat an insurmountable foe, and it starts to look a lot more like humans doing what humans sadly do best: find a large, attractive target, hunt it down, and don't know when to stop. Endermen peacefully coexist with Jean, neither attacking the other, but true to their roots, the Endermen are still capable of dragon hunting if forced to. If they're hit by splash damage from one of the Ender Dragon's attacks while you're fighting it, the truce is off. They retaliate and begin fighting for their lives. That old dragon hunting spirit dies hard. Unfortunately, any hopes that the Endermen might have for restoring the Ender Dragon population are meaningless. Sure, they may have decided to stop hunting, but they were too late. While the Ender Dragon does leave behind an egg, that dragon egg is inanimate. There was just a female dragon, Jean, to lay the egg, but due to the lack of a male dragon, her egg isn't fertilized. It's incapable of hatching. Nothing more than a trophy for whatever hunter might arrive to slay the last of the Ender Dragons once and for all. An Ender Dragon forever alone, forever sad at the loss of a race. So on one hand, we absolutely shouldn't kill the last of this species, but on the other hand, it might just be freeing her from her quite literal eternal torment.